Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen, the channel that brings you your team every single day. Apologies, there's no shirts hanging on the wall. My, what are they called? Picture hook things are broken. Anyway, welcome along to Glasgow Rangers Nation. We're going to talk a little bit about our fantastic new manager, Phillipe Clement, and what he had to say to Sky Sports. That obviously he will speak to the media formally even, tomorrow in the Blue Room at Ibrox in an official unveiling of Phillipe as our new manager by the club. Obviously, that will be covered here on the channel. But he has been speaking to Sky Sports ahead of, obviously, that official unveiling and talking about his, the reasons for why he took the job, talking about the, his ambitions, talking about, the picture that he's got of Rangers. And you know what? It was all exceptionally encouraging, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And very positive, very positive. I watched the interview, and to be honest with you, it left me feeling exceptionally optimistic about the future, very positive about this guy. He impresses me as being a guy who has a clear vision, a clear focus for the future, and someone who really does genuinely know what they are talking about after that used car salesman, Michael Beale, that we had previously, who for me was just kind of, I don't know, bluffing it. I think the best word is chancer, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's the best word to describe him. We'll also touch on a little bit about that short that I did earlier, touching on what Todd Cantwell has had to say about that absolute, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't use the word here. I don't want to get banned by YouTube. Chris Sutton. I'm sure you all have a word for him. I have a word for him, but I'm not allowed to use it in polite company. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And we'll obviously continue to look ahead to the Hibs game on Saturday as we build up towards that live stream here on the channel on Saturday. So please come and join me for that. Anyway, manager Phillipe Clement has been talking to Sky Sports ahead obviously of his official unveiling tomorrow at the club, and talking a little bit about why he took the job, talking about his aspirations for the future. It was a fascinating interview, an absolutely fascinating interview that he did, and there was some great points that he drew out in that, and some things that I think we really do need to look at and think, yes, this man really does know what he is talking about, and it is nice to have what I would call a proper manager at the helm. Now, one of the first things that Phillipe spoke of, and he was questioned about this, was the fact that had he had offers from other clubs, and he talked about the fact that there were 3 concrete offers on the table. Obviously, one was from Al Shabaab, which does sound like a terrorist organization, in Saudi Arabia. Where obviously the financial remuneration for Phillipe was far higher than what Rangers were offering. He also said there was another European club, although did not name that said European club, that there was a concrete offer on the table. But one thing he said that was really interesting to me and had echoes of Jack Butland, who has been by far our best signing this summer, was the fact that he talked about the fact that both of those other options, the European club and also the Saudi club, were very much higher financial offers for him. However, he decided that he wanted to come to Rangers. He wanted to come to a real football club because he said there was a real project for him, and he was excited by the sports project there was at the club, rather than obviously the extra money. Now, that for me is really encouraging, that Phillipe Clement is not thinking of the money. He is thinking of a project. He is thinking of developing himself further as a manager. And I think that he's seen that here at Rangers, he has more opportunity to do that than he would at Al Shabaab, where he pretty much goes into retirement. My views on Saudi are very clear. I'm sure you all know what my views on Saudi are. But it's really reassuring to hear that this guy wants to be here, that he doesn't want to be anywhere else, that he's turned down more money elsewhere, that he has a desire to be at this football club. And that's what we want at the end of the day. We want managers, we want coaches, we want players who want to be at this club, who want to fight for the badge and want to go out there and do their best. And that certainly seems to be where Phillipe is coming from on this. He was asked, obviously, about the conversations that he'd had with former Rangers manager Graham Souness, who was revealed was involved in the interview process. Now, he said that former Rangers manager Graham Souness had been involved in the initial interview processes, and had apparently, given Phillipe a very clear view on what was expected at the club. He gave him he gave him great depth and great details about the club, about the fans, about the expectations in Glasgow and the expectations of being a Rangers manager. And he was very clear about what it was to be and the responsibility it was to be the manager of this great club. And I think, that for me is reassuring. Now, Graham Souness it's been rumoured had Frank Lampard as a preferred candidate. Well, apparently that's not true. Apparently, Graham Souness actually ruled out Frank Lampard. So, that's one thing I think we need to clear up. And apparently, Souness was very much behind the appointment of the Belgian Phillipe Clement, our manager. So that's great news. And it's great news that obviously that Graham was involved. But, Phillipe Clement said it wasn't just Graham Souness that was involved, that further down the line, he had conversations with other ex-Rangers players and ex-Rangers people. So that's reassuring to know that former players and former club employees have had involvement in this process, not just Bisgrove and Bennett. There has been a kind of very thorough process in recruiting of this manager. So it gives me optimism that this is the right appointment for the club and we have made the right steps forward in terms of the future of the management side of the team. Philippe also revealed that he had spoken to former Rangers player Thomas Buffel, who he previously worked with at Genk. He said that he'd given that Buffel had given him some great information about the club, that he talked to him. He talked to him about about what was on offer, about what it was like to be a Rangers, involved with Rangers, what it was like to be at the club, and gave him a great insight into it. And he certainly said that Thomas Buffel gave him some good info. And it was all part of this process that reassured him that he was going to the right club, that he had a good project to work on, a future project to work on. And it was pretty spot on with what he said on that. So that is really reassuring that, that Phillipe Clement, he wants to be here and that he is clear that there is a project here, there is something to work on here, and there's a development to make. And he clearly sees Rangers as a great opportunity to really establish himself as a real top manager. After that wobble he had at Monaco, he needs somewhere to come back and to rebuild, and this is certainly the place to do it. And if he can be successful here, then he will build himself a legendary status. That's not what he said, that's my words, obviously. He was asked about the players' confidence and where the players' confidence was at, and after that defeat against Aberdeen, how the players' confidence would be at an all-time low. It was asked, does that mean that major changes are needed? And he said that change would be more gradual, that he thought that if he went in and made massive changes straight away, that would cause more nervousness amongst the players and actually not get the best out of the players. It's clear to me that he is a very astute man. He's a player that understands, that understands how players' minds work. He understands how to get the best from his players. One thing that's come across, I think, that from people who've talked about Phillipe Clement, who have a knowledge of Phillipe Clement, is that he knows how to get the best out of his players. He knows how to develop his team and to develop his players and to get them to buy in and feel part of a family, feel part of a community within the club. And I think, if you can get the players to feel comfortable, to feel, as part of something, then that is half the battle. You will get probably more out of them than you will by doing anything else to them and making, especially in this modern era where footballers need to be more cosseted and looked after, which I know many people would argue is wrong, but unfortunately that is the world in which we live in these days. He said as well something really intelligent. I think, he talked about the fact that, that if you're expecting him to implement all of his football philosophy in 5 days, that is just practically impossible. And I think that's absolutely clear. And it relates back to what he said in that initial interview with Rangers TV, that, that it's going to take time for him to implement his strategies, time for him to implement his fluidity of system, time for him to get the players to play how he wants them to play. And that's something we've got to give him. Temps et patience. I think that's the way. Time and patience is something we very much need with Phillipe Clement. He is very clear, I think, on his strategies, very clear on what he wants, and that is very, very reassuring for me. He's also confident as well, after Rangers had 4 managers within a very short period of time. He's talked about the fact that he is quite clear that he has that time to succeed, that there is an understanding there with those in power, that there is time there for him to build something and to build a team that is capable of dominating again, which is really good to hear. And he says it's clear from both sides what the expectations are, and it's clear from both sides how we intend to do that. So, there is I think an understanding between Phillipe and the board what is expected of him, and he is clear. He's made it clear to the board what he expects of them, and I think there is a common understanding there. And the more we can get the board and Phillipe working in unison and working together, the better for the club. It does seem to be a very positive, forward-thinking strategy that Phillipe Clement is coming in with. He was asked as well about did he understand what it was like to be in the city of Glasgow, and he said, yeah, he was clear with it. He was understanding of it because, Thomas Buffel had made it very clear to him what it was like to work within the city of Glasgow and have that old firm rivalry and have the understanding of what the pressures have been a Rangers manager. He said that it was all about, developing, a strategy. And he was asked about the fact that was it his intention to bring in a Rangers man into his coaching staff, someone who knew the club, who knew the background and the expectations? And he said, yes, that was very important to him, to bring in someone who knows the city, knows the club, knows the fans, and knows the team. So there is a clear, I think, vision there that something will happen as regards bringing in someone from the past. Now, obviously, Rangers fans have mentioned Kevin Thompson, Neil McCann, Barry Ferguson as possible names to join with Phillipe Clement and his coaching staff. Obviously, at this moment in time, we know that Phillipe Clement and Stefan van der Heyden will take the team. Phillipe Clement is our head coach. Assistant head coach is Stefan van der Heyden. Thomas Buffel will not be joining him. Rumston Evans, I think the guys' names are, who worked with him previously at Bruges, will not be joining him. But he did say that at this moment in time, he is working with the interim staff, and it's up to him, whether or not that continues, whether or not that is something that works long term. The involvement with Alex Ray, with Colin Stewart will stay on as goalkeeping coach. That is understood that with Smith and with Gilmore, whether that is something that will continue or whether that is something that will change in the long run. There certainly seems to be no rush to sort that out, and I think that's positive. There is no rush to. It's not a disaster that we haven't got a massive coaching staff organised already. The fact that we have Clement and Van der Heyden, and that's clear. These two are the top two. These two will organise and say what happens. Phillipe Clement is a hands-on coach. He's a hands-on head coach. He likes to be on the coaching field. He likes to work with the players. He's not the sort of guy who will stand back, let the coaches take the training sessions and just give team talks and do other things. He is very much hands-on. So you'll see Clement and Van der Heyden take a very hands-on approach. And yes, at this moment in time, that Gilmore, Smith, Alex Ray, Colin Stewart will have a role. Whether that is something that continues long-term, that will be something they will evaluate as the process goes on, and whether that continues or whether that's something they want to change. He was asked about pressure, and he said he loves pressure. He said it was the same at Club Brugge. There was an expectation to win the league and then win it again, then win it again, then win it again, then win it again. Something that obviously we have here at Rangers. It's not about just winning one league title, is it? It's about repeating and retaining that league title. And once you've got your foot on Celtic's throat, never letting it up and never letting them get up and choking them to death. And that is certainly something that Phillipe Clement is very much aware of. But he says it's who I am. There was a great quote in the interview that he gave, and I love this quote. He says, "No one could put more pressure on myself than me. I want to win every game." So it's clear that he has very high expectations of himself. He has a very clear vision for himself, that he wants to be the best, that as a coach, he wants to win, that he will not accept second best, that he will not accept regression, that he will not accept a step back, and that he puts pressure on himself. And for me, that's reassuring that he can deal with the pressure, the cauldron of the old firm atmosphere, the cauldron of the city of Glasgow, that he is quite able to cope with that. He says he wants to be perfect every day and then improve every single day on perfect, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm not quite sure how you can improve on perfect. He was asked about that 7-point lead that lot from across the city have currently got. And he says it's not for him to talk about that. It's for him to focus on what we can do. It's a focus about moving this club forward, to play better football, to have better synchronicity with the fans, to be more dynamic, to be more attacking, to be more fluid going forward, and to build on what we've got and to build forward. He says, you've got to take this, about the now, then next week, then next month, then next year, and build like that. You cannot look. He said it's like a marathon. He says we could try to sprint to catch up 7 points, but we will end up with no legs. It's a marathon, not a sprint. He said the league is still very much in the balance. Look, I get that, and I get his optimism there, and I understand that. But realistically, this is on your last chance in terms of catching that lot. You cannot afford to lose any more points. The league pretty much comes down to this now. We are drinking in the last chance saloon. If we were to lose any more games and they were to win that game and move 10 points ahead, then the league will be definitely dead at that point. Realistically, Phillipe Clement, needs to win the League Cup. He needs to win the Scottish Cup. He needs to progress in Europe and then just chase that lot as best as he can. Hopefully we can catch them. There is 3 old firms remaining, but we cannot afford to slip up. And one of the things he's got to do as a manager going forward, or a head coach, whatever you want to call him, is make sure that this team can not just win 1 or 2 games and then perhaps slip up, but actually put 12, 15 game winning streaks on, into play. If you do that, if they know that we are relentless, we are coming after them, we are putting together 5, 10, 15 game winning streaks, that's when they will start to feel the pressure. Part of what has enabled Celtic to move far ahead of us is the fact that there is an expectation on us as a club always slipping up, always dropping points where we shouldn't, having the odd duff result, like the Aberdeen result, for example, like the Kilmarnock result, and falling behind. And that is something we've got to get away from, and something that Phillipe Clement as a manager has to get away from. But it was a fascinating interview on Sky Sports. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out online. Obviously, we look forward to the press conference today. Well, one last thing I want to cover, which was I covered in a short earlier, was Todd Cantwell and his continuing war of words with Chris Sutton. Now, Chris Sutton is clearly two-faced. Chris Sutton is someone who praised Todd Cantwell when he was at Norwich. And look, Chris Sutton is desperate, isn't he, for column inches. He's desperate to try and appeal to that lot from across the city and their parasite fans. This is what Todd Cantwell had to say, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. And people have had a go at him and everything, but I'll tell you why I think it's okay for him to say this in a moment before you have a go at him. He said, Chris Sutton is an attention seeker. If you had a good career, why are you sat on Twitter hammering a lad you said was an amazing person and player at Norwich and think he forgets that? What's he doing is playing up to his links at Celtic to stay relevant. I mean, what a fantastic comment. So true. Chris Sutton is just playing to the crowd, isn't he? He's trying to carry favour with the green and grey from across the city, that despicable club from across the city. That's what he's trying to do it for. Brand. And look, this is why Todd Cantwell is entitled to defend himself. He's entitled to say something, because Chris Sutton has basically called him a cheat, a diver. He's called him TikTok Todd. He's called him all the names under the sun. He's branded him, like I said, a diver, someone who goes down way too easily. So for me, Todd Cantwell is quite within his rights to defend himself and say to Chris Sutton, shut up, because you can't lecture, mate. You are a second-rate centre forward who had one good season and failed at Chelsea, failed with your national team. So you just need to shut up. You really do need to shut up, Chris Sutton. You are first pundit in Scottish football. So respect to Todd Cantwell for standing up for himself. Okay, guys, thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. As always, if you think I've earned your sub, please hit that sub, guys. We are growing phenomenally at the moment. Thank you so much for all the support. We've got a few pods coming up as well. Look out for those. I'm working with getting some guests in. Scott McPike from Rangers Assessment, Caroline, the wonderful, beautiful Caroline Morrison from Heart and Hand, and also the wonderful, beautiful Marina Ballantyne from Heart and Hand as well. I'm working on trying to get those back on to the channel. Anyway, thank you for watching. And as always, 2 things I need you to do on the way out. Number 1 is smash the like. And number 2 is remember always, we are the people.